What is going on, guys? Reflex here, and it is another episode of The Last of Us Down the Hatch. And man, episode 3, titled Long Time, honestly, other than the first episode, it might be one of my favorite episodes in the show. I'm not gonna lie. And the thing is, it probably has the biggest change from game to show and so far that we've had. Now, obviously, spoilers ahead for both the game and the show, so if you guys have not watched the episode or played the game, I suggest, playing it and watching it and then coming back here, which you probably wouldn't be here unless you watched anyways, because it says review on it, so I'm gonna talk about it. But regardless, the episode starts off, we're 10 miles from Boston. Ellie and Joel, fresh off a losing test. You can tell that Ellie is attempting to make conversation with Joel, but Joel's really not having it. It's kind of like this little awkward kind of conversations where obviously Ellie wants to talk about what just happened. Joel doesn't want to talk about that, and you find this out later on in the episode. They run across places to loot, and they kind of go their separate ways while they're looking in there. Ellie actually, as soon as they get in there, sees a Mortal Kombat 2 arcade. Now, the cool thing about this arcade machine is, it's cool to see one, because you don't really see them that often nowadays, like unless you actually go to a place that has them, but not many places do, especially not Mortal Kombat. You're not putting those kind of games in there. But seeing one of those and hearing her talk about Melina was actually pretty funny. And the funny thing is, right after she was talking about the characters in MK2, my brain was like, hold on, let me make sure. And then I had to actually look up to see if Melina was in MK2, because I didn't remember, because I know MK1 was, had a very little characters, and they started adding a couple more in there. But I was like, hey, she likes Melina, that's her favorite character, and it's fitting. It's pretty fitting. But then she separates from Joel, and Joel goes ahead and starts looking for things. And when Ellie goes into this room, she finds this little basement area that she goes into, and she finds some stuff, but then she spots an infected. Now, she's pretty intrigued by it. She's scared at first, even with it being under rubble, but she's intrigued, and she gets out her mom's switchblade, and she goes ahead and starts just cutting at the head and seeing what's inside. And you could tell the infection definitely took its course in there for sure. But then she just stares into the eyes of the infected, and I think that's when she realizes that there's no life there anymore, because she's staring there, because she asked Joel in the previous episode, what's it like knowing that they were people before. And I think that was probably what was going through her head, is that this was a person before, but then she looks and she knows that that person is no longer here. And that's when she does the killing blow, Walking Dead style, kind of just stab to the head. They're no longer there. But that is actually the first infected kill that we see Ellie get, and it's kind of a cool moment, to be honest. But then they reconvene and they go on their way. But then Ellie asks to Joel how the infection started, and Joel actually brought up about the whole flour and then pancake mix and all of these things. And it's really cool, because when you realize in the very first episode, there were so many moments in that first episode where they actually could have gotten infected if they would have eaten the pancake mix at the beginning, the biscuits that the neighbor was offering, the cake that they could have brought home. There was so many opportunities to just show that they're not, they're lucky, even though their luck did run out at the end of that episode. But still, it's just the fact of there were so many opportunities that could have infected them. But it's a nice little touch to get even more information about exactly how this infection started, because we didn't really get that in the game, not really at all. But then they start walking, and Joel says that he doesn't want Ellie to see this, but she's like, what, is it gonna hurt me? She keeps walking, and then she sees this pile of skeleton and bones and all that stuff there, and you see clothes. And Joel says that, yeah, Fedra would promise to take them to the QZ, knowing that they did not have enough room, and they would just actually off the whole bunch of people that weren't infected, by the way. They were actually not infected, just normal living humans that have every right to go to the QZ, but there's not enough room, so they would actually just kill them off there and dump their bodies, which is insane. But then Ellie asks why would they do that, and Joel says, well, you can't be infected if you're already dead. And that line really hits, just because you realize how bad that Fedra actually is, and we don't really see much of that. Obviously they killed a boy, but he was infected. But they kind of tried to paint Fedra as nice people, where in the game they were actually killing innocent people right from the jump. Yeah, there was people that were hanged in the beginning, but Like in the actual game, there was people just getting murdered, and Fedra were not nice people, and you kind of knew that right off the bat. This one was teetering, but we don't really even get talks of Fedra anymore, but it's nice to hear that no, they are actually shitty people, and here's why. But then we go back to 2003 where we start getting Bill's backstory. Now this is where I was looking forward to, not only for Nick Offerman, but also just seeing how he would portray Bill and see how they would do the story. And you actually got to see exactly when they were taking those people, and the neat touch that I'm pretty sure is what I gathered was when they were taking the people from there to the QZ, the lady that you saw when they first went to the flashback was wearing the same clothes as what was the skeleton by the clothes that you were seeing in the ground. So those were the people that were murdered, even though they were not infected and were promised to go to a different QZ and be safe. So those were the same people, but one of the people that were in the neighborhood was Bill, and he did not go. And then you had this long montage of Bill pretty much getting prepared and preparing for the future. He is a survivalist, so he was really prepared and knew it. I guarantee he prepared for this situation and knew every single place he would have to go just in case this kind of thing were to happen. But then you go 4 years later and you start to get Bill and Frank's backstory. Frank shows up and you actually see in the trailer that he was hungry, and you know, Bill says, well, this isn't the Arby's, I don't give out free food. And then Frank hits a rebuttal saying that, well, Arby's didn't give out free food, it was a fast food restaurant. And obviously Bill doesn't care about that joke because he doesn't care about people. At that moment in time, he does not care if everyone just died. He's there for himself and only himself. But Frank actually convinces Bill to help him, and he gets a nice fancy meal and wine. Now, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, if you haven't eaten in a while, which for Frank it was a couple days, but you know, since where that was taking place, those couple days, probably all he was eating was just like, because everyone knew at that time probably about how the infection was spreading, so he probably wasn't eating anything actually good. But then you see Bill just treat you with this fancy dinner and actually getting some wine too, and you're just like, well, you saw Frank's reaction was just like, what, you're feeding me this? Like, geez. And the fact that he was comparing himself to Arby's, like, let's be real, Arby's ain't giving you that. No. But the thing is, you probably be paying the exact same price though. But then you go on, you start seeing how they became partners, and it was a nice touch. And the cool touch is, I believe Frank probably is the reason, or even what made Bill come out, because it seemed like that was the very first time that Bill kind of came out as gay. And it was a neat touch, but it was also like Frank kind of propelled Bill to everything he was in the future because of the fact he helped them meet Joel and Tess. Now the thing about that was, you know, they were arguing and Bill was just saying like, yeah, I don't want people being here, we're not gonna make friends. And then Frank says, well, I've been talking to this nice lady on the radio. And then next thing you know, they have dinner with Joel and Tess and Frank are like the exact same. They're outgoing, they want to talk, they want to meet new people, they were having a blast. But then you see Bill just holding a gun pointed at Joel, and he's just not having it. And Frank comments about it, and then you see Joel understanding. He actually understands every single like reaction that Bill is giving, because I mean, he's the exact same way pretty much. He does mention, however, he'd rather not have a gun pointed at him, and then Bill finally stops. But Frank was actually the cause of why they were working with Tess in the first place, and was also why they were communicating through the radio of songs through the years. And that's a nice touch, because you're kind of probably wondering like, well, how'd they get to communicating? Because in the game, you don't really get this. You don't get this version of Frank at all. All you get is a note that in the game is a suicide note, because him and Frank aren't together anymore. Frank actually hated Bill towards the latter half of them being together. So this was a major change into the show, but I actually enjoyed it. But you get Joel warning Bill about the Raiders coming, and you actually get that later on in the episode. And Bill was prepared, and he thought he could do it all on his own, which you don't really get to see exactly what happens. But Bill gets shot, and then he's explaining everything to Frank, like, you're gonna need Joel to take care of you, blah blah blah, we gotta do this. And he just has called Joel, and Frank's not really listening, I think, because maybe he already called Joel technically, because they already had that song through the radio communication little way that they were doing things. So maybe he already did that prior by putting the music in there. I'm not sure if that was a part in the episode that I couldn't see. He didn't seem very terrified. Like, he seemed like he had everything under control, was already preparing for all of this, and he patched up Bill. Now, it did seem like Bill was gonna die right there, and that's when my brain was like, oh, all right, we're changing right there. I guess Bill's about to die, and it was gonna be Frank that they would meet in later on with Ellie and Joel. But instead, you fast forward another 10 years, and you realize Bill is still alive, and so is Frank, but Frank's actually ill. Now, I'm not entirely sure if they said it in the episode what Frank was sick with, because it kind of confused me. But you just notice that he can't really paint anymore. He can't really do much of anything that he used to. So Bill has to take care of him. And obviously, when you're in that state of mind, it probably eats away at you. And then later on in the episode, Frank does say, Bill, this is going to be my last day. And they prepare this, you know, they go to the boutique, pick out some outfits, get married, then have a nice dinner with some wine. And then he was going to get up these pills, crush them up. And then he was going to have Bill pour him in his glass, mix it up, drink it, and that was going to be the end of his life. But he wanted one final good day with Bill, which honestly, I think that whole segment right there, it seems like they just have these emotional moments in every single episode. But that one right there, it was actually getting to me, because I was just like, damn, this is a lot more that we didn't get in the game. Because in the game, we honestly, you could miss Frank entirely. You don't have to pick up that letter, I don't believe. You don't even have to discover Frank's body. And it's kind of odd to see all this backstory and then realize they're actually having, I don't want to call it a happy ending, but it is kind of a happy ending. And you get to the point where the whole day is through, and then he gets the 2 glasses and he pours the wine and he puts all the pills and the powder in there and he mixes it up. And then he serves himself some wine, serves Frank some wine, they drink it. And then Frank realizes that, I think he knows that the wine had some, after he drank it, he realized that there was already some in the bottle itself. And he realized that Bill did it to the bottle too, because he also wants to go. He's old, he fulfilled his purpose. His purpose was to save one person. And he says this in a letter to Joel, but it was to save one person, and that person was Frank. And he was happy, and they got to die happy. Then you get to the point where it's actually in the present. Joel gets to the place, he realizes that the gate isn't opening, so he opens it himself because he knows the code. He goes in there, they go into Bill's room, well, not Bill's room, but Bill's house. Then he knocks and he tries to get in, the door is locked, and Ellie stumbles across this letter with the key. And then the letter she reads is this pretty much suicide note to Joel. And it states that he left the window open so it didn't smell, but they're both dead in there. And he says that I found my purpose to save at least one person. And then he says, hopefully you can keep Tess safe. And that eats away at Joel, because he realized that not only could he not keep Tess safe, but he couldn't even keep his daughter Sarah safe. So then he realized that, because he looks at Ellie, and then I think he realized that, well, this has to be the person that I keep safe, because not only has now Tess said to keep Ellie safe, Bill pretty much said to keep Ellie safe, but in a different way, because he said keep Tess safe. And I mean, Joel has to kind of keep her safe because he can't fail. And we know how that goes throughout the games, but in the show, this is when it comes to a turning point where he realized, like, you have to stay alive. We're going to get you to where you need to go, and you got to follow my 3 rules. And it was a nice scene. And this episode was very, very good. Now, the only disappointing part, I'm not entirely sure if they're going to show the scene, because one, we don't get to see Ellie and Bill. Ellie and Bill is actually a pinnacle part in the game, just because they played nice together, in terms of, it was funny because Ellie got on the nerves of Bill got on the nerves of Ellie, and they were just going back and forth, and it was just great. And then you get into the truck, and in the game, she goes through this magazine and she says, why are the pages stuck together? And then it's just a funny little scene, but I'm not sure if we're going to get that in the game, which is disappointing. But I do think this entire episode, even though a lot is completely changed, I think it was really, really good. It was one of my favorite episodes of the series so far. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel with them changing stuff, but then after I started watching it, I even watched the making of the episode and their reasonings behind it. I actually do enjoy it, and I'd argue I think this almost works better in terms of the story, in my opinion, because Bill, he helps you in the game. You go through with him and you go to fight your first bloater, and that's a cool part, but you don't really get anything about Frank or even really get to know Bill at all. You just know that Joel came there for a favor because he owed him one, so that was kind of the whole ideal there. But in terms of the show, it was just a lot better. He even says in the actual letter that I never liked you, Joel, but I respect you. And it was a great episode. I enjoyed every bit of this. The next episode seems to be a crazy, like, I think I know where we're in terms of the game, and it's going to be a lot of fighting and a lot of probably like tense moments where you're like, oh man, it's gonna be great. I can't wait, because so far they're 3 of 3 in terms of hitting bangers of episodes. I can't really give things 10 out of 10, but in terms of this episode, the way my rating scale has been going, I have to give this one a 10 out of 10 because of the fact I enjoyed the story elements that they provided in this episode. I think it was really great in terms of developing the backstory, developing the characters. Now, I will say what I saw people have gripes of is that it seems like these episodes are almost one-offs, because you get the first story with, you know, Sarah and Joel, kind of Joel in Boston, and the next episode is Joel, Tess, and Ellie, and then this episode is Bill and Frank. And you keep losing these characters, and they're quick. You don't really get to see them as much, but I think it works. I do think it works. But if you guys did enjoy this video, let me know down in the comment section below how you guys enjoyed this episode. I honestly do think that this episode was great, but I would like to know your thoughts down below to see how you guys enjoyed it. But if you guys did enjoy, leave a like, subscribe, and you guys know the drill. I will see you guys later.